Oh, hello everyone. This is Kristen, and it's a great honor to be here today and for our regular podcast. And for today, we're gonna talk about the Polkadot versus Ethereum. But before uh, or please allow me to introduce Forward a little bit because even though we started in 2019, but we're still new to many places. So Forward was founded in 2019 and is the first and largest Polkadot community in China. And Forward strives to rally widespread support around the Polkadot protocol, substrate framework, and Web3. And Forward was running as an independent Polkadot Chinese community and founded by Web3 Foundation in around for 2 years since 2019. And but since 2021, and Forward has established an open social contract with Polkadot Treasury and got funding from Polkadot Treasury. And now OpenGov launched and we start to get funding from the OpenGov. Okay, and let's get back to the topic we are going to talk about today. And we will discussing the Polkadot versus Ethereum because I picked up this topic because 10 years ago, Gavin Wood released the Ethereum yellow paper, which in many ways ushered in a golden decade for our blockchain industry. And early this year, Gavin released the Gem Green paper, and remarkably, almost exactly 10 years after the yellow paper. I think this is the perfect moment for us to revisit and reflect on the vision and the evolution of these two projects. So, without further ado, let's kick it off. First of all, could you two of our two of our guests and start by introducing yourself and telling us how and when you first get involved with Polkadot and Ethereum. Let's kick it off from Sean.
Yeah, sure. Thank you guys for having me once again. Um, my name is Sean, and I'm the founder of Polkadot Labs, and we're building Hyperbridge. So, I mean, I discovered Ethereum way back in 2017. This was just after the market crash. I was kind of wondering why people were valuing cryptocurrencies so much that I decided to look at the underlying technology, and I found it very fascinating. The idea of a decentralized and fully permissionless execution environment for programs that are essentially self-executing and fair to everyone. Um, I basically became nerd sniped, and I started contributing to some Ethereum projects, some open source Ethereum projects. I was also exploring the idea of like building a payments application way back then on Ethereum. Um, I then quickly realized that Ethereum itself doesn't really scale very well, and
Mhm.
this was also around the time that I then joined ETH Core, or Parity as you now know it. Used to be called ETH Core back then, and they were basically founded by Gavin Wood, and he was the co-founder of Ethereum, and they were working on Ethereum, the core infrastructure of Ethereum itself, rather than just like applications on top of Ethereum. And I thought this was very, very interesting, and maybe this would be a great opportunity to contribute to the scalability of the underlying, Ethereum infrastructure. Um, but of course, that didn't happen. Instead, Gav went on to found Polkadot, and the entire Parity team essentially started working on Polkadot. So this is kind of how I've come to also discover Polkadot.
Okay, cool. And thanks for sharing. You've been go with Ethereum and Polkadot all along. So very looking forward your insight in our following topics. So Christine, would you briefly introduce yourself and telling us how and when you first got involved with Polkadot and Ethereum?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for having me. My name is Christine. I'm the ecosystem development lead for Tansy. So quick intro about Tansy. So Tansy is an app chain infrastructure protocol. Basically, what we're trying to do is to make app chain and parachain deployments easy on Polkadot. And then we've recently announced our Ethereum expansion plans, where we're working with Symbiotic to follow a similar architecture we have on Polkadot to make AVS deployments easy for developers. And then just a little bit myself. I think I got involved with crypto mostly as a retail in the very beginning. I think I discovered Ethereum back in 2017 when I was still working in TradFi and helping a family business in Hong Kong to manage a crypto fund. And then the fund was sending us a lot of information about the latest developments of the crypto industry. And then Ethereum was part of the fund's portfolio. So I got to know things like smart contracts, what blockchains are, and also the difficulties, the challenges in blockchain scalability. And then moving on, fast forward to probably 2020 or 2021. Again, I found out Polkadot as a mostly as a retail. When there was a craze on crowd loans, I got interested and wanted to see what crowd loans were. And my friends, they were more degen than I was, and then they made a lot of money through the Moon River crowd loans. So I think like all of my interests were mostly driven by degen activities at the beginning. Yeah, that's basic intro about me.
Okay. Uh, yeah, some people got a lot of money from Polkadot and Moonbeam, and also they lost a lot. uh, okay. Let's move on to our first topic, and which is Polkadot initially set out to improve upon Ethereum. In your opinion, has Polkadot achieved that goal? Let's start from Sean.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very interesting question. And the answer to it is not entirely straightforward. Um, let's start off with, I guess, the fundamental problem, which was scalability. Ethereum was just a single blockchain, and as is anything that is limited, is that when there's a lot of demand, it goes up in price. The supply goes up in price, and this is not good for internet scale applications that for instance in AWS you can very easily just spin up a new EC2 instance and that can then handle the load. You put a load balancer behind it, and you don't increase it doesn't this doesn't increase the cost of your users in any way, in fact. But this is just not the case in blockchains, and I think Polkadot delivered the first sharded blockchain architecture that has the capacity to perform this horizontal scaling at no extra cost. So you could say that that's definitely one improvement, um, but it's more subtle than this, of course. Ethereum now, of course, has L2s. The second improvement I would say would be, interoperability between these L2s. Polkadot has fast interoperability between these L2s. You move from Asset Hub to Bifrost or to Hydration in a matter of seconds. Whereas on Ethereum, this can take 7 days using the canonical bridges. Now, of course, you want to use this insecure bridges, then you're fine to do this and you risk your money. So that's definitely also another improvement, I think. Um, but in terms of, I want to say the developer um, ecosystem, or rather, I guess the parachain ecosystem and the developer tooling, unfortunately, Ethereum is still doing much better than Polkadot at this, and we have to take a sober look at these things, right? Um, it's the case that Ethereum in the early days invested in a lot of things that made the developers' life so much easier. I give you things like Remix, which was a web IDE that made it easy to deploy contracts. They had the Mist browser, which was an integrated browser that had all of the Ethereum tooling. This was a lot of focus on making the lives of developers easier. We've not seen such things in Polkadot, unfortunately. More so is also an investment in ecosystem development, making sure that ecosystem teams have everything that they need to succeed, and also getting out of their way. It's not enough that you give them the tools that they need, but also important that you don't stand in their way when they are about to start to scale and may potentially grow bigger than you. There's tons of applications on Ethereum that is much bigger than Ethereum itself. The USDT, for instance, contract, it has over $100 billion in asset. This is the largest application on Ethereum. And so, when you consider these things, like I said, there's definitely things in ways in which Polkadot improved on Ethereum, but there's still a lot of stuff that is, in my view, lacking in Polkadot on the Polkadot side.
Yes, I agree with you. For the technical side, for the architecture side, Polkadot is obviously in advance. But for the for the developer side, it should be more developer welcomed, and for the community, it should be more encouraging for community to involve. And so, Christian, what's your take on this topic?
Yeah, I agree with Sean, and he's pretty much covered it all. So I think it depends what you mean by better, right? And also, what do you mean? What you mean by the goal? And then I still believe that the crypto industry is still very early. And then there's no like one single best blockchain. I think a lot of it comes down to trade-offs. You have some strengths in certain aspects, and then there are always both sides to the same coin, and there are also, as a result, there will be associated side effects or trade-offs. I think in terms of technical capabilities, Polkadot succeeds in offering, for instance, near instant finality of 6-second block time. And then it already, endorsed, or I would say like adopted modularity at the very beginning, where Polkadot basically divided execution layers on as parachains, and share security and interoperability as relay chain, and also the DA. As a result of that, parachains on Polkadot, they benefit from much better scalability, and also much better, much more reasonable gas fees, all of which are kind of what Ethereum and also possibly other ecosystems are trying to converge into the Polkadot architecture. But on the other hand, right, with this like modularity and also this design, Polkadot kind of suffers with I'll say this is unhinders the user experience for both developers and retail users, and as a result, the adoption of Polkadot as a network kind of lags behind Ethereum. Whereas if you look at Ethereum, I would say they had the first mover advantage in attracting user base. But because it's kind of built as a monolithic chain, and like if they want to move towards modular architecture without tools, they suffer problems with very slow transition times to building share security layers like Eigen and Symbiotic. And then they also suffer problems related to centralization, typically associated with the sequences of the layer 2 blockchains. So I think I would say, like, in my opinion, like how I view the industry is that all roads lead to Rome. So I think eventually um, people will reach the end goal of a decentralized ecosystem at the end, but I think it's just different paths that different blockchain ecosystems are taking.
Mm, yes. Thanks for your sharing. And I agree with Christian for one thing that is it is true that Ethereum is more adaptive compared to Polkadot. But Ethereum have 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 its have its own uh, uh, have its own problems to solve. Genshin will launch on Polkadot, and the architecture seems quite similar to Ethereum's. But uh, Ethereum is currently dealing with L1 transactions moving to L2 solutions, and L1 transactions doubled, and while the L2 transactions doubled, while L1 transactions reduced 99%. And I think after the launch of the Gem chain and Polkadot looks like exactly the same as Ethereum, you know, according to the architecture. So, do you think that Polkadot, will follow a similar path as Ethereum and facing the same problems, or 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 Polkadot will go in a different direction? So, how about Christian stuff first? Uh, I I cannot hear you. Maybe you have to
I was on
unmute
mute.
your.
Yeah. So probably I don't understand the gem chain architecture enough, but I think I don't believe that after gem chain the architecture will look like Ethereum's. I think they're moving towards the same directions, right? Entire Web3 industry, they move from monolithic to modular and then to aggregated network. And whereas I think Polkadot started off, the exception is that Polkadot started off on modular. And I think how I view Gem Chain is basically as a chain that can service both other blockchains as well as smart contracts. And I think this is something that I would say that also we like Ethereum is also moving towards to where we are seeing increasing number of projects that focuses on network abstractions, blockchain abstractions, as well as virtual machine abstractions. So I think at the end, I think I would say like eventually that both projects would probably follow a similar architecture, but it's not that Polkadot converging to Ethereum or Ethereum converging to Polkadot. I think at the end is more kind of like a more aggregated network where users probably would not feel that they're using, or they don't need to be aware of which blockchain they're using. So it's more like a abstracted blockchain user experience. Yeah, that's my view.
Okay, blockchain user experience. So, Sean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's really going to change unless there's a better approach towards, like I said already, ecosystem development and developer tooling as well. Um, like you said, the Ethereum chain has seen a major drop in transactions, whereas the L2s have seen, all-time highs in terms of transaction counts. Um, it's, I mean, it's the case that, we already also have L2s on Polkadot. Um, and, in my view, honestly, Polkadot works pretty well. I don't really think that Jam is necessarily needed at this point in time. I think the problems that Jam solves um, is for a more hyper connected and more hyper scalable blockchains in the future that need synchronous compositions with each other, and they need to be able to do the kind of scheduling that the Jam chain provides. Sure, of course, you could run smart contracts on this, but in my view, and from my conversations with Gav as well, this doesn't seem to be the focus of Jam. It's not. They're not going to be called smart contracts. It's just generalized programs, and then whether this program is a blockchain, whether this program is some other kind of program, it doesn't actually matter, right? So I don't think that we are actually at that inflection point where Jam is needed. But Gav has always been ahead of the curve, and I think we'll just have to trust him on this one. But we're still, slowly catching up to what Polkadot can do, right? It's just the case we got Snowbridge this year, we got Beefy this year, we got all of the stuff that was, originally promised async backing, 6-second block times. We all just got that this year, and now we're already on Jam. I think we should first off look at what are the applications of Polkadot before moving ahead. And I think um, the biggest application for Polkadot right now is this idea of a co-processor for I guess the broader Web3, where sure, maybe the user experience of Polkadot for everyday users might be a little too complex, but the user experience for developers, and the sort of tooling and the sort of services it could provide for developers, and including but not limited to things like interoperability, things like data availability, I'm saying things like just general co-processing for AI, or for intents, whatever the case may be. These might be the places where Polkadot shines, while we continue to figure out the developer tooling and the necessary ecosystem investments that will then make Polkadot much more user friendly to the everyday user.
Okay. And I agree with you, showing that we need applications to to attract the users. And let's say that now uh, the tech already very developed, and we have a lot of tools, and the developers love it very well. And so, what kind of applications do you think can uh, uh, you know can be the next big through, a breakthrough uh, of the Polkadot ecosystem? What the application would look like? So let's start from Christine, because I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, that's a tough question. I think now I feel like we're kind of at this stage where everybody is experimenting. I think like at the stage everybody has realized the importance of applications would have on mass adoption, and I think a lot of teams are kind of still at the kind of experimentation stage to test the market with their products. Honestly, um, my currently like the things I most also like been paying a lot of attention to would be RWA vertical. I just and I think it's just more of a personal preference, since I believe like the biggest utility for crypto is basically programmable money. And then I think moving, not just virtual, like basically crypto reflecting virtual assets, but I think even, I'll say like reflecting real world assets onto crypto, and then improving things like liquidity, transparency, accessibility would be something really bullish for the industry. Um, so yeah, so my personal favorite so far has been RWA.
Yes, RW could be the application that bring more close to Web2 users, and that can help bring more Web2 users to Web3. So, Sean, what's your take on this?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree that and this is also something that Vitalik recently touched on, which is this notion of the fact that most of DeFi is just this Ouroboros, this snake that basically swallows itself. Um, Maybe a little side note on this is that when a snake swallows itself, it actually grows smaller and it keeps infinitely growing smaller because it's basically swallowing itself, right? And this is, I think, the case for DeFi is that if it's just tokens that are derivatives of tokens that are derivative of tokens, and the market that can be addressed with this sort of technology only grows smaller. Whereas if we have real world assets, if we have real world utilities on chain, then actually we are now addressing real world problems, and it's no longer this Ouroboros. I think teams like Centrifuge are well positioned to basically allow real world fund managers be able to issue assets that can be natively multi-chain in the most secure manner possible because of how highly interoperable the Polkadot stack will be. So yeah, I agree with Christine here.
RWA. Okay, I agree with you two guys. And there are more applications like GP, like AI. Let's go with RWA first. Okay. So let's move to our next topic, which is
Oh, hold on. Sorry
Ethereum.
to interrupt. I gotta drop. I have to head to another meeting. Thank you for having me today, and really nice meeting you, Sean. See you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. See you next time. Okay. Great, Sean. Just two of us. So our last topic. But for our listeners, I think if you have more questions, you can leave your comment here, and we will pick up some good questions and to see if Sean can ask your questions online. So our next topic is about the inflation. Ethereum has now entered an inflation phase uh, because of the L2 centric strategies, because a lot of transactions move to L2s, and there are not so much transaction on L1, and so the burning of the ETH reduced a lot, and Ethereum has already from deflation uh, to have changed to inflation, and uh, that caused a lot of bug in Ethereum community. But Polkadot also had a long debate about inflation. Uh, it's been so long, debating on the forum, and it eventually deciding to reduce it to 8%. So, do you think that inflation plays a major role in the success of a network?
The inflation discussion to me is um seems misplaced, and the reason for this is Ethereum, even before this recent switch back to inflation, has mostly been inflationary for like the longest time, all the way from its inception in 2015. But that didn't stop its adoption. That didn't stop its meteoric rise to over $300 billion in market cap. I think that we are in the Polkadot ecosystem distracted by all of the wrong things. Inflation is not the issue. Um, the issue is that there's no developer ecosystem. There's barely an existent parachain ecosystem. Um, and honestly, it's the case that you can justify any inflationary metric or any market cap metric as long as you have a growing ecosystem, right? Like these are um, these are sort of growth phases that protocols go through where they have to issue a lot of tokens because they're growing and it's healthy to do so. I mean, also look at Solana, for instance. Solana has very high inflation, but you don't hear anyone discuss the inflation. Why is that? Because Solana has a very active developer ecosystem, and a very active application ecosystem. And people are too busy using applications to worry about the underlying inflation of the Solana asset. So, sure, maybe lower inflation might be better, but ultimately that should not be the focus of the ecosystem. I would prefer to see the focus of the ecosystem be towards how can we reignite the Polkadot developer landscape and get people building on Polkadot again.
Yes, and get people to develop on Polkadot again. But the adoption is sometimes is a very elusive question. So, do you think that if we got enough excellent tools for developers and we get our technology ready, what else do we need to attract developers into Polkadot?
It's a very, very tricky situation that we're in, especially because it's now the case that there is much more scalable, much more cheap block space everywhere else, especially in the Ethereum ecosystem where there's basically all of the liquidity. This is going to be very, very hard. But I believe that there is still a chance. The Ethereum L2 roadmap is broken fundamentally because of the lack of native interoperability. Now, it might not be a major issue at the moment, but I believe that this is going to become something that holds the L2 landscape back. This lack of trustless interoperability between the rollups. This could be something that Polkadot itself fixes, and maybe also uses this to bring in teams from Ethereum into its ecosystem that is highly connected, has native interoperability with all networks, and allows allows developers to basically serve the multi-chain and not some specific ecosystem, right? So these are ways in which I think we might be able to bring back the developer landscape and the developer ecosystem. Um,
Mm,
Other than that, if we're going to say, oh, just put EVM on Polkadot and call it Plaza, I don't think that this is going to work at all. I think that there's already a lot of EVM chains out there, and they're all losing to Ethereum and its network effects and its, ecosystem of developers and applications.
yes. In Polkadot ecosystem, I met a lot of strong believers, and they all believe in the long-term value of Polkadot. Um, what's your perspective on this? Because believing in long-term is good, but how long it's gonna be? So uh, is there a point that it's been a long time, and when do you think that it's the end of long term?
I mean, for me, I think that the only value proposition that Polkadot has is its industry leading technology. It's essentially ahead of the industry in a lot of critical metrics. Um, but if it's the case that the industry catches up, then we won't really have anything else going for us. Um, so we need to accelerate this. We need to accelerate. When I say accelerate, I mean build applications that show off these capabilities, before anyone else can, so that we can at least secure some market share or industry you know um, mind share around specific niches, around specific subsectors in in the ecosystem, in the industry. um, Otherwise, like if we lose that, for instance, I think if we lose interoperability, if we lose the interoperability narrative, given the fact that Polkadot was literally the first interoperable blockchain, it's going to be very hard to get that back. And that's just an example here, right?
Mhm.
So how long is too long? Like I said, once the industry catches up, however that's possible. I don't. Now, me personally, I don't see how the industry can catch up to the interoperability that Polkadot has natively. The only solution to this would be ZK cryptography, which is notoriously expensive. People say that, well, computers are going to get faster. Actually, they've not been getting faster. They've not been, the improvements year over year that we've seen in hardware hasn't been the way it used to be. And it's also the case that even if these hardware elements get faster, then that also means that blockchains themselves get faster. Like, Polkadot itself gets faster. So it's like, ZK. I like to make the analogy that ZK is like, you know, is like a small car pulling a very large truck, which is essentially all that computation that you have to prove, versus a sports car, which is just a normal blockchain, like a normal roll up, like Polkadot parachain. So these hardware improvements would actually benefit both, and then this keeps Polkadots being faster anyways. So that's kind of my perspective on this whole discussion. But I'm a believer in the technology fundamentally. I mean, I built the technology. It's kind of hard not to be a believer in something you built with your own hands. But I'm just worried that we might be getting too complacent and thinking that we've won, when it's the case that we haven't cracked, that mind share, mainstream mind share.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have the same worries as you have. But Polkadot is now, the open gov plays a very, very important role in governing or directing the Polkadot ecosystem. So, uh, do you think is there anything uh, people can do with open gov to accelerate, uh, some proposals or something that to to release the worries you have?
Unfortunately, I'm a contrarian. My opinion on OpenGov is very contrarian, and I don't think it's very popular. I think OpenGov has done more damage than good. Unfortunately, I think the time when we had the council, at least things were still reasonable, to some extent. The council voted against most of the time they voted against very large spends, because it was just no way to justify these spends, right? But now, when it's an open community and there's literally no one who will take responsibility for these spends, they just get passed anyhow. And very often these spends end up doing more damage to the reputation of Polkadot itself, and that's insane. Look at the recent, the recent shenanigans with the KOL spending and Polkadot trending on Twitter, and everyone basically hating on Polkadot. That's an example of how OpenGov can be bad. Um, and so I think that there's a reason why um, we always put the most educated people and the people with the most know-how and the people with the most specific knowledge to do specific things. We don't ask the entire population their opinions on nuclear energy or on geopolitics. We don't ask the entire population, what's their opinion on climate change, right? We have scientists that we delegate to, we have engineers we delegate to for these things. I think that kind of structure needs to come into OpenGov, where specific spends or specific categories of proposals are delegated to experts who are able to give us reports on what the impact of a specific proposal will be before it is then voted on. That sort of oversight is currently lacking, and it's very likely that the treasury runs out of funding before we put this in place.
Hmm. Yes, and I know some people are working on that, to structure to have a overall picture of the treasury, like for for activities and for event that gonna be take how much percent And for the technical side, take how much percent? They are working on a overall picture of the OpenGov expenses, the treasury expenses. I hope that they can move very fast because uh, now everything is relying on or depending on OpenGov. And I think Polkadot is the first network that totally decentralized, and relying on OpenGov. I think it's a testament for all the industry. So, but we have to work very hard to forward and to reflect on ourselves and to fix something very quickly. That's how we can, catch up on the market and to win back the developers. Okay, and things. Uh, I think at the end of our conversation, uh, would you like to up to give us some update about your project, so and people can know how is it going?
Sure, for sure. So, you know, for those who don't know, Hyperbridge, it's been in development for the past 2 years. We predicted that Polkadot would enable a lot of things that would make it essentially the most um, viable layer for interoperability for the multi-chain. So essentially, Polkadot could become the settlement layer for blockchains exchanging messages with themselves. Blockchains outside of even the Polkadot ecosystem. And I'm happy to say that we've completed our development. Hyperbridge is fully audited, and at this point in time, we're now in our mainnet launch sequence. As most of you have seen, the official Hyperbridge account is now tweeting. We also announced our fundraising from the Web3 Foundation and Cycle Digital just this week. So we're very, very glad to have the Web3 Foundation as a backer here. We believe that the technology that they've built is essentially the best technology for interoperability in the space today. Um, and we'll be making announcements in the coming weeks of our partners that we've already partnered with who are going to be leveraging Hyperbridge's technology. And we can very much expect we can expect mainnets before the end of Q4, optimistically by next month. So that's kind of where we are with Hyperbridge. We're also open to working with teams in the space and outside the space who are interested in secure bridging and secure interoperability, and not having to trust the centralized bridges of the world.
Okay, and thanks for sharing. And I think we've touched on so much on Polkadot and the Ethereum, the inflation, the architecture, and the applications, and also uh, the updation about Hyperbridge. So it's a great. I think it was a great time and good talk today. And thanks for sharing to be here with us. And thanks for your time. And thanks for all the listeners that joined in. And I checked on the comment. And if listeners that want to comment, we will pin this recording on our Twitter file. And if you have more questions, you can leave your comment, and we will reply on your comment promptly. And if you are interested in Hyperbridge, please follow their Twitter and reach out to them for anything you'd like to know. And thanks, Sean. Thanks everyone for being here today. Hope you can come back next time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And bye, everyone. Cheers.
Okay. Bye bye.